Not your grandma's meatloaf. This is juicy and tender, just the way it should be. Super easy to make. Let's get started. Hey everybody, I'm Kelly with the Suburban Soapbox, and today we are making my favorite meatloaf recipe. It's super easy to make and it has a tangy and sweet glaze that just bakes on and makes it absolutely perfect. This is not your grandma's meatloaf. It is not dried out. It's so juicy and so perfect. You're just gonna love this. To start our meatloaf, we're going to use ground beef. I like to use an 80-20. You can use a 90-10. Just know that your meatloaf will be a little bit drier than what we have here. I like the extra fat in the meatloaf. It will render out into your baking pan, so you don't really need to worry about that too much. And then we're going to take 2 Italian sausage links. And you can buy bulk sausage as well, but this is just easier to manage and portion out. And you're gonna remove the sausage from the casing and just add that to your bowl. And we'll do the second one. And 2 eggs. So I have 2 large eggs here. Room temperature is best. They don't have to be room temperature, but it just works out better. It doesn't get all weird with your ingredients if it kind of blends in a little bit better. And then your onion. Now the onion, you can definitely saute this in a little bit of olive oil if you want to get an extra caramelized flavor, but we just have some finely diced minced onion here. And then our seasoning, it's Italian seasoning. You can use oregano, some dried basil would be great too. And now a little bit of Dijon mustard. So we just grab this panko breadcrumbs. I like to use the panko breadcrumbs because they're a little bit lighter, less dense than your standard breadcrumbs. Tomato paste, some minced garlic, Worcestershire sauce, gives it extra beefy flavor, and then salt and pepper. And now we're just gonna go in, clean hands. You can also use a pastry blender if you don't really like to get in here with your hands, but I feel like hands work best here. And you're just gonna blend it all together. So I like to just start by lightly folding everything and breaking up the meat gently with my hands. The one thing about meatloaf is if you overwork your ingredients, you're just gonna have a tough, dry meatloaf. So you wanna make sure that everything gets incorporated, blended together really well, and then you just shape your meatloaf. It's kind of like a giant cheeseburger. If you overwork the meat in a hamburger, you're gonna have a dry, tough burger. And then once it looks like it's pretty fairly well blended, you're gonna start to shape it. So now it's kind of together. We're going to shape it the rest of the way in our baking dish. I'm just gonna wash my hands real quick so I can spray that with some cooking spray. I just like to use a little baking dish, and you wanna have a little bit of a lip here. So if you're gonna use a baking sheet, make sure it has a lip so that it catches any of the fat that renders off of your meatloaf. So I'm gonna coat this with cooking spray. This is more so that your glaze, once you glaze it and it has sugar in it, it doesn't ruin your pan. So just a quick coat of cooking spray, and then we're gonna take our meatloaf and transfer it to the baking dish. Get any of that little extra and lightly form it into a loaf. So like a loose rectangular oval shape. And some people like to do this in a loaf pan. I do not like to do this in a loaf pan. I like the fat to be able to escape. You just want it to be uniform in size so that it bakes evenly. I'm just gonna wash my hands again, and then we'll make the glaze. Now that we have our meatloaf ready to go, we're going to make the glaze. So for the glaze, we're just going to add some ketchup. And if you have homemade ketchup, that's even better. And some balsamic vinegar. I like the taste of the balsamic. It's a little sweeter than like regular white distilled vinegar. My mother used white distilled vinegar when I was a kid, and it was lovely, but more pungent. This is more subtle. We're just gonna whisk that together a little bit, and then we're gonna add some brown sugar. And we're gonna whisk all that together. You might have a little lumpiness in your glaze, and that's fine. all of that will melt down in the oven, and it gives it like a really nice caramelized flavor on top of your meatloaf. This is reminiscent of like a barbecue sauce. So if you're wondering what all of this will taste like, that's kind of what it is. I know my husband just likes ketchup on his meatloaf because he's weird, but I love this glaze. This glaze takes me back to my childhood for sure. All right, and we're just gonna pour about a quarter of the glaze on top of the meatloaf, and I'm gonna brush it to coat, and then we're gonna pop it in the oven. So I just like to pour it on top, just like that. You can use a spoon if you like to, and then just brush it to coat all the way around your meatloaf. All right, we're gonna pop it in the oven, 350 degrees for about 30 minutes, and then top it with some more glaze, and then 350 degrees for another 30 minutes or until it's baked all the way through. So our meatloaf is done, and I let it rest for about 10 minutes. You want to make sure that you give it a chance to rest so those juices can be redistributed into the meatloaf. Otherwise, once you slice it, all the juice is going to come out. So I'm just going to take a little slice. That's a very little slice. I need a bigger slice than that. Gorgeous. You can see how it's not compact. It has lots of flavor in there from the onions and the garlic. After you plate up your meatloaf, you can take some of that reserved sauce, the glaze, and drizzle that over top. I love the glaze. If you have lots of leftover, you can use it for burgers or save it for your next day meatloaf sandwich. I'm gonna take a quick bite. Big bite. That is so good. It's the perfect marriage of flavors. The garlic and the onion is not overpowering, and you can taste that sausage. It is so amazing. If you like this recipe, please be sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. For more easy recipes, visit thesuburbansoapbox.com. Thanks again.